Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to this beginner's session where what we're doing is we're having a look at slam bidding technique for beginners. Now I know that this is one of the most rewarding yet most intimidating aspects of the game for many people, where you love it when you can bid to a slam contract and make it, but the thought of going down, or for a lot of people even the thought of bidding a slam contract, seems so foreign, where normally what you're trying to do is start it, but then you end up avoiding bidding slam because you're just so nervous about giving it a go. So today what I wanted to do is reinforce what you're trying to do when you are looking for a slam and how to go about it, also a way that you can start to improve as a newer player in this area. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so when we're having a look at slam bidding, the first thing we need to know is what are the slam contracts. Now, these are any contracts that are going to be at the 6 level or for a grand slam at the 7 level. Now, not only do you have to bid to that contract, you have to make that many tricks. So 12 tricks for a small slam and 13 tricks, all the tricks for a grand slam. Now, there's no extra bonus at all for playing at the 5 level. The only time you'd get an extra bonus is at the 5 level is if you were playing in a minor suit. And that's because we need to bid to the 5 level to have a game contract in a minor suit. So nothing for the 5 level in majors or in no trumps, but then the 6 and the 7 level, they're slam contracts and it doesn't matter what denomination, whether it's a major, a minor or no trumps. And the scores for it are pretty good. If we have a look at sort of being not vulnerable, we're going to get somewhere between about 900 and 1,000 points if we're just looking at a small slam. And if we are vulnerable, it's going to be a massive 1,400 points. So really good to get those vulnerable slams. If you have a look at it compared to the game bonus, it's only 400 or so or 600 or so for a game bonus. So the slam bonus is so important to be able to get. It's so many extra points. When we have a look at grand slams, so this is the 7 level, the bonus is even more huge. If you're vulnerable, you get over 2,000 points for bidding and making a grand slam contract. Now, what do we need for slams? This is where it gets a little bit interesting. It's kind of the same as thinking about a game contract. When you learn the game, you get taught that you need 25 or more points for a game contract. It's basically exactly the same for a slam contract. Now, what we say is that for a small slam, you're going to need 33 or more points. So that's the 6 level. And for the 7 level or a grand slam, you're going to need 37 or more points. Now, this is a bit different depending on whether you're playing in a suit contract or whether you're playing in no trumps. If you're playing in no trumps, it's basically going to be your high cards that take tricks. So when we talk about those points, it's actually only going to be high card points or length points. When we're talking about a slam in a suit contract, what we're actually talking about is total points. So this is where you've added on extra points for your distribution. Most people have learnt that you count an extra 5 points if you've got a void, an extra 3 if you've got a singleton, and an extra 1 if you've got a doubleton. Now, this is because what's going to happen is with a suit contract, you're of course going to have that power to trump. In no trumps, it's just going to be your high cards and your long suits that take tricks. And that's what the difference is. Now, when we think about it, these numbers are pulled from the fact that basically if you've got that many points, you're going to be able to take that many tricks. So we say that for a game contract with 25 or more points, you're going to be able to get the amount of tricks that you need to get that game contract. With a slam, the idea is if we've got 33 points together, we're going to have enough to be able to actually make 12 of the tricks. Now, this is a rough guide. As you'll know with game contracts, sometimes you bid to a contract and you've got enough points, but it goes down. It's exactly the same with a slam contract. Sometimes you bid to a slam contract that you've got the requisite number of points, but you end up going down in it. It's exactly the same. Also, for instance, you might miss a game where you only had, say, 21 points, but it makes a game contract. Same applies for slams. Often you'll see that you might only have 28 or 29 points and you only bid to game, but you make 12 tricks. Now, generally, when this happens, you shouldn't feel at all bad or shouldn't feel like you've done anything wrong. If you've got less than 30 points, a slam contract might make, but there's no way that you actually want to be there. There's no way that it was going to be a good contract. It just means that something good happens. Either all your finesses worked or everything broke nicely, or you never know, your opponents might have been there with a little bit of misdefense to help along the way. So to have a good slam contract, that's what we're looking for. Sort of 33 to 36 points for a small slam and 37 or more for a grand slam. Now, one thing you might think about with a small slam and only having 33 points is the fact that we could be missing an ace and a king. And that is completely true. That could be two tricks that we're missing off the top. But if you got to that slam and you were missing an ace and a king, it would still be a good slam contract to be in. It'd still be one that you'd want to be there for. It just happens that it goes down. Now, interestingly, I wanted to sort of reiterate this idea of total points as compared to high card points and have a look at what actually happens. So here I've got my lovely little diagram of what I like to consider the approach with points. Now, if we just think about high card points, there's only 40 in the entire deck. The deck is constrained 40 points. Once we start adding on distribution points or total points, what we're doing is we're actually increasing the size of the pie. So we're saying that there's far more than 40 points in the deck. If we think about it, if both players had a void and they were actually both counting an extra 5 points, that would increase the size of the deck by 10 whole points, giving it a total of 50. So the thing that happens when we start to include distribution points is that the size of the deck is increased. Now, what this means is that you could still have 33 or more points, but now you're 33 or more points. It's out of a total of, say, 45 or out of a total of up to potentially even 50. So what's happened is because we've expanded the size of the deck, basically 33 points has changed whether it's out of just the 40 of the high card points or if it's out of this expanded deck where what we've actually done is we've actually added on total points. Now, the thing that this is important to realize for is that we need to be able to check that we're not going to miss two tricks. Now, one thing a lot of you might have learnt is a convention called Blackwood or maybe even Roman keycard. And basically what happens when you use those conventions is that you're checking that with this expanded deck of points, what's happened is that you're not actually going to be missing two tricks straight off the top, or in a way of thinking about it, two aces or two key cards. So that's why we have this idea of total points and needing to do a couple of checks, and we've got this idea of just high card points for no trumps, because they're just looking at the tricks we can take through our length and through our strength as well. So what we want to have, those 33 to 36 points for a small slam, and also 37 or more for a grand slam, and not missing two tricks. And especially that's important when we are counting distribution, because we have expanded the size of that deck. Okay, so let's have a look at our slam bidding problems. Now, one of the most common ones that I get is what happens when you've got somewhere between 31 and 35 points. So let's take a look at an auction, and we're just looking at the auction and seeing if we can work out what's going on. So let's say that I open one heart, and just playing simple limit raises, my partner bids something like 4 hearts. What would I know about their hand? What would they be telling me? Now, they'd be telling me that they had somewhere between about 13 points and 15 or 16 points. They're saying, I've got enough for game. Opposite your opening hand partner, I've got 13 to sort of about 15 or 16 points. And my partner would be fully entitled to count any shortage points they had here. So let's think about what would happen now if we came back around to my hand, and let's say that I had maybe 19 points or maybe 18 points, for instance. What would happen here is that I'd be in a little bit of trouble, because I'd know that with my points and my partner's points, we might have a slam contract. So if partner's got 13, if I had 19, we've only got 32 together. But on the other hand, if partner actually had, say, that 15 or 16, we're definitely going to have enough for slam. Now, this is exactly the same approach that you should take when you're looking for game. What you're doing is you're adding together what partner's minimum points are and what their maximum points are. And one of the toughest situations that you end up with is one of these times where you know that your combined partnership has somewhere between, say, about 31 and 35 points. What's going to happen? What are you going to do? Well, the first thing that you should consider is there definitely a chance of having 33? Now, in the situation that I've just given you, there definitely is. Sometimes though you'll have those extra points, but you only get up to say 32 together. Now what that would be is that'd be say something like where I had maybe 17 points. And I know that we've definitely got say 30 because partners promised me that they've got 13, but at the maximum, when partners said they've got 15 or 16 maximum, what would happen is that we'd just be that little bit shy of points for slam. We definitely have enough for game, but we don't have enough for slam. And I think that's one of the biggest times that people fall into the trap. They know they've got those extra points, but they just don't have quite enough to be able to commit to a slam. Then we've got the situation like I just mentioned. You've got 19 points and your partner's bid 4 hearts. You know you've got at least 32 together. And if we add on partner's points, at most 34, possibly 35. So what are you going to do? Are you going to give slam a go or aren't you? And these questions are really, really tough. Now, a problem that we have here, I guess, with the normal slam conventions that you use, say something like Roman keycard or Blackwood, is it's going to answer one of our questions for us, but it's not going to answer the second. Now, what I mean by that is that we had 2 criteria when we wanted to bid slam. First of all, we wanted the requisite number of points, so we wanted 33 to 36 for a small slam, but we also wanted to be not missing 2 tricks, or 2 aces as we like to think about it. And what ends up happening here is that if you use a convention such as Roman keycard or Blackwood, what you're going to do is you're going to answer one of those questions because you're going to know if you've got the right number of aces or if you're using Roman keycards, but you're not going to know if you've actually got that requisite number of points. What I mean by this is that if I had 19 points, I could easily ask my partner for aces, and who knows, we could even have all the aces together. That wouldn't be that far-fetched at all. But the problem might be is we might not have enough points to actually be in a good slam contract. And that's because we won't have enough kings and queens and other things that we need to make the slam. So using something like Roman keycard solves one of our problems, but it doesn't solve the other. And this is a trap. This is something that you just have to be able to, I guess, cope with in bridge, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's one of the problems of the game, and one of the great things, I guess, that is why we play the game. We play the game to challenge ourselves, and we play it because it doesn't have all the answers. If bridge was black and white, it'd be boring. So here's a couple of general tips that you can use. The more distributional you are, the more eager that you should be to bid your slam contract. Now, what I mean by that is that if I got up to my 19 points and I basically just had high cards and I was really balanced, I wouldn't be so keen to go on with a slam contract. On the other hand, if I had some sort of extreme shape, maybe if I had a 6-card heart suit and a 4-card another suit, then I'd be more keen to definitely put the motions in slam to get going and have a look for that slam contract. So generally, the more distributional you are, the more eager that you should be to bid slam. Also, if you're ever asking yourself, should I give it a go or shouldn't I? Listen to the opponent's bidding. Have they actually done anything? Now, what I'd say is that most of the time, if you're ever considering bidding a slam contract, if your opponents have opened the bidding, then basically never do it, because don't forget, they've already said they've got 12 points. So they've already sort of, I guess, given us alarm bells to know that slam's probably not going to be a good proposition. On the other hand, if they've just passed, then it's potentially more likely. The other thing is, did they overcall? If your opponents did overcall, this can be, I guess, a bit of a blessing at times, but also a bit of a hindrance. So if they did overcall, it would be their way of expressing points. And if you were in this situation where you knew you had, say, 31 to 35, what it would mean is if they overcalled, it's potentially more likely that you're going to be towards that lower end, and you shouldn't be as eager to actually look for your slam. That being said, like with all things in bridge, there are buts. If you got to that position where your opponents had overcalled, another thing you might want to do is have a look at what cards you have in their suit. If you maybe had a void in their suit or something like that, that would actually make your hand much, much more powerful. And the reason for that is that you know, because of their overcall, a lot of their points are concentrated in their suit. And it means you get to trump those points. So that'd be a good thing. But that's a bit more advanced. Now, I guess one of the problems that I often see with newer players in slam contracts is that they're hesitant to actually give them a go. Now, if you're making every slam contract that you bid, It's a sign that you're not bidding enough slams. Now, as far as the scoring goes, it's not actually a bad thing to be in a slam contract that has a 50% chance of making. So what I mean by that is that if you had to take a finesse to make your slam, it's generally not a bad thing to be in that slam contract. Or another way of looking at it is if you were even only making half of your slam contracts, you prefer it to be a tiny bit more. But if you are only making half of them, it's not going to be the end of the world, especially when you're a newer player and you don't have the tools in your kit bag with the conventions and that sort of thing that you actually need to, I guess, more scientifically bid slams. So what I suggest that you do, you probably don't bid enough slams as it is, but just have a go and experiment around a little bit, trying to apply these tips. The more distributional that you are, the more eager you should be to give slam a go. Listen to the opponent's bidding as well. Now, I wanted to teach you as well one of the most useful things that I find in the game, which is what we call the quantitative no trump. So the way that it works is that when it comes to no trump slams, in a way they're one of the easier slams to bid. And that's because it does all come down to the high card points. And there's two ways that it can work, where what you can do is you can find out the things that you really want to know. So if my partner opened one no trump, how many points would I need to think that slam might be a potential option? Now, the way you work this out is you subtract their points from the points that you would need for slam. So the way of thinking about it is if I want at least 33 points to be in a no trump slam, and I know my partner's got somewhere between 15 and 17, what I do is I think about what's going to happen with their points. Now, for instance, if you had 18 points yourself, you'd know that if your partner has 15 for their 15 to 17 no trump, you're going to have at least 33 points. Now, this would be a situation where if you didn't have a 4-card major or you didn't have a 5-card major or a really long minor, where you'd know you'd want to play no trumps. And rather than actually using Blackwood or anything like that, what you should do is just simply bid 6 no trumps. So this is if you've got 18 or more points. Now, the reason that you can just simply bid 6 no trumps and you don't actually have to ask for aces or anything like that is coming back to this idea up here of, I guess, my little wheel that I've got. Now, when we were talking about no trump slams, what we're talking about is high card points only. Now, what this means is that when partner opened showing 15 to 17, if you've got 18 yourself, it guarantees that out of our deck of 40 points, you've actually got 33 or more, somewhere between 33 and 35. Now, the whole point of using 4 no trumps would be to check that we're not actually missing 2 aces. If we think about the high card points, though, we can't possibly be missing 2 aces if we happen to have 33 or more points. And that's because of the fact that there's only 7 points remaining in the deck, so the opponents have a maximum of 7 together. We can't actually be missing 2 aces. So what you can do is with 18 to sort of about 20 points, you can just simply bid 6 no trumps. Now, on the other hand, if you had, say, something like maybe 17 points or maybe 16 points, you're in a bit of an interesting situation. And this is because you know that you might have enough for slam, but you're not actually guaranteed it. So this is where if partner has their 17, you're definitely going to have 33 together. But if partner only has their 15, you're not going to have 33 together. And one of the most useful conventions that you can use, and it's just after a 1 no trump or a 2 no trump opening, is actually use a bit of 4 no trumps to say, partner, I want to know how many points that you have. Are you closer to the top of your range or are you closer to the bottom of your range? And I want to invite you to slam just in no trumps. So 1 no trump pass 4 no trumps, or alternatively 2 no trumps pass 4 no trumps should be sort of the same thing. Are you closer to the top of your range or are you closer to the bottom of your range? Now, having a think about it with a 2 no trump opening, how many points would our responder need here to invite slam in no trumps? Again, we'll use that same process. So if we want to have 33 together, what we need to do is subtract what partners told us. Partners told us that they're going to have somewhere between 20 and 22 points. Now what this means is if you had 13 yourself, you'd know you definitely had 33 together. Again, you wouldn't need to bid 4 no trumps, you could simply place the contract in 6 no trumps. On the other hand, if you only had, say, 11 or 12 points, what would happen is that you'd know that you maybe had enough for slam, but you weren't sure. And this is where you could bid 4 no trumps, which says, partner, are you closer to the top of your range or the bottom? And remember, there's no need for this to be a Blackwood bid or a keycard bid or anything like that. And that's because we know, just because we're looking at high card points, whether we should bid slam or not. So what happens if it goes 2 no trumps past 4 no trumps, or 1 no trump past 4 no trumps? It's responder's way of simply saying, partner, are you closer to your 22 or closer to your 20? And if it was over 1 no trump, it says, partner, are you closer to your 15 or are you closer to your 17? So the way that partner answers is pretty simple. If they're closer to their maximum, they simply bid 6 no trumps. So here, this would be our opener's way of saying, look, I've got 17 or maybe 16 points as well. If they're not closer to the top, they've just got their minimum, what they simply do is they pass the 4 no trump bid. Now, the benefit of this is that what you've been able to do is you've been able to explore if you've got enough points for slam without actually having to commit to slam. What I mean by that is you could easily, if you were just playing it as Blackwood or something like that, you could bid 4 no trumps and you'd find out partner's answer about the aces. But again, that might not be all the information you need. You might need to know if partner's actually got enough points. The aces might be completely useless. You could have all the aces but not have enough kings and queens and things like that to be able to make enough tricks for slam. So what we've been able to do is use this convention. It's called the quantitative no trump, and I think it's one of the first slam conventions you should ever use to be able to find out if partner's closer to the top of their range or if they're closer to the bottom of their range. Now, it's not done that commonly, but it could also be used for something like a suit contract. So let's say our auction went 1 spade past 4 spades. Now here, this is where our responder playing limit raises would have said, look, I've got somewhere between about 13 and 15 points, or maybe 16 partner. And remember, if we came around to our opener and they had, say, something like 19 points, maybe even 18 points, they'd be in a really tough position. And that's because they'd know if partner's closer to their 15, 16, they'd have enough for slam. But if partner's not closer to their 15, 16, if they're just their 13, they're not going to have enough for slam. Now, it's not that commonly done, but one good use is of something like 5 spades is to say, partner, I want you to bid slam if you're closer to that maximum, but I just simply want you to pass if you're closer to the minimum. And that's the minimum for your point range. So that would be here, if our responder has something like their 16 or 15 points, they could bid 6 spades, alternatively they'd just pass. So they could bid 6 spades here, oops, not 6 hearts, if they were closer to the top of their range. And that's just one little tip that you can use, rather than asking for aces when you actually need to check if you've got the right number of points. So this is how we, I guess, get around these two ideas. Do I have enough points for slam? And also, am I going to be missing those 2 tricks? Now, in terms of the general tips, I think it's really important that what you try to do as a newer player, if you're bidding lots of slams and you're going down, what it is it's a sign that you need to sort of come back and, I guess, revisit how aggressively that you are bidding slam. But for the most part, I find newer players aren't bidding slam nearly as often. So I think what you should do is experiment around a little bit. If you are in that range where you know you've got at least maybe 31, 32 points and you know there's a chance of having enough for slam, do take a bit more of an aggressive action and see how it works out. Apply these general tips. The more distributional that you are, the more eager you should be to bid slam. Listen to the opponent's bidding. What are they saying? Now, as far as where you can go from here, what you want to do to improve your slam bidding is first of all just get an idea of what it's like playing slams and what it's like bidding them, because I know for a lot of people it's quite uncomfortable bidding slam contracts. Once you get to that sort of stage where you're comfortable with the idea of bidding them, doesn't make you nervous every time you bid a slam contract, you want to start to incorporate these quantitative bids. So something like that. When you get to the point of adding more science into your slam bidding technique, the next steps, and they are quite drastic leaps, are learning conventions such as cue bidding and also Roman keycard Blackwood. And we do have lessons on both of these that you can watch throughout the rest of the Bridgevid site. Now what I wanted to do is just go through a few different hands and we'll have a look at what bidding some slams is like, and we'll have a look at, I guess, how the play would go, or how we think the play would go. So let's get into it. Alright, just got to bring up some boards. Okay, so here we are, and what we're going to be doing for these boards is just having a look at the north-south hands and thinking about how you'd feel and how you would be bidding them at the time with you and your partner. So the first one here, what we have is we have our north player as the dealer. Now, if we take a look at North's hand, they've got quite a nice hand here. I think, what have they got? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 19, 20, 23 points. So a lot of people would potentially even open this one 2 clubs with their 23 points. One other thing I didn't mention is that if you're something like the South hand here, and your partner's open 2 clubs, it's always going to be a sign that what you want to do is you want to bid a slam contract if you've got, say, 12 or more points yourself. As a general rule, most of the time I'd say that I even bid slam if I've got 10 points as the responder to a 2 club opening. So that's just another tip. But what you'd probably do is the South hand, if you're playing 2 diamonds waiting, which is my preferred convention, what you'd do is you'd bid that here. If not, you'd probably have to do something like bid no trumps yourself. Then if partner came back and said something like 2 hearts, what you could do is you could now raise their hearts. At this stage, your partner might be at a stage where they're thinking about, am I going to go or aren't I with the north hand? Now, one thing that's quite interesting, once you open a 2 club game force, everything's all relevant as to what you've already shown. And what you want to do is think about, have I already described my hand? Is my hand actually that much better than what I thought it was? And if I held the north hand, I'd probably think my hand's not that much better than what I already described it as. And I already described it as strong enough to want to go to game. So what I'd probably do is bid 4 hearts. Then coming back to our responder's hand, so the south hand, they've actually got a really good hand. So they'd now be the one that's responsible for making the moves to slam. And here, if you played Roman keycard, that'd be something that you would do. Alternatively, if you don't play Roman keycard, if I was the south player here, I'd just give 6 hearts a go. And that's because when you're the responder to a 2 club opening, you always want to take a push for slam if you've got 12 or more points yourself. As a general rule, I'd actually say even 10's enough to go on to slam if you're the responder to a 2 club opening. You might have a slightly different option to the one that I've just given you, and that's because some people wouldn't play 2 diamonds waiting, and some people, you never know, might have bid no trumps with the north hand rather than 2 hearts. That's just a way to have a look at one. Okay, let's have a look at another board here. And again, we're looking at the north-south hands, but this time we're just actually looking at south as the dealer, not north. So when we start off as the south hand, we've got a nice 1 spade opening. And when it comes around to our partner's hand or north, they've now got the opportunity to raise our spades. But how are they going to do it? So with this hand, what they've got is they've got a lot of points. So here they're looking at 21 points themselves. Now, they could just simply give a game contract a go, but they've got enough information that they know that slam's going to be a very good prospect. And that's because they've got, I think, 21 points themselves, and I've promised 12 for my opening bid. So in this situation, what's happened is north is the player that's got enough information to know that slam's going to be a good contract. They can add the opener's points onto their points to know that slam's going to be a feasible option because we've got at least 33 points together. So what would happen here, if I was the north player, I'd know that if you do play something like Roman keycard or Blackwood, that would be my role. If you don't play something like that, you could actually just bid 6 spades yourself. So you could actually, and I've got that in the wrong spot, sorry about that. You could just actually bid 6 spades yourself. And that's because you know that, and it's just even on high card points alone, partner's got 12, You've got 21 as well, so it's going to be enough for a slam contract. And that's how you'd get here. Now, one of the other things that I forgot to mention a bit earlier is that people who play Blackwood or Roman keycard and conventions like that, sometimes they're a bit of a, I guess, can be a little bit tricky in the sense of you use them and you find out that you're missing one ace. And a lot of people think, well, I can't bid that slam contract because I am missing one ace. When you're missing one ace, that's definitely when you want to go to the slam contract. If you're missing two, you don't want to go there at all. But missing only one, you definitely want to go to your slam contract. And that's because you're only trying to take 12 of the available 13 tricks. You're allowed to be missing the ace. That's going to be the one trick that you're not going to take. So what you'll want to do, even if you're missing one ace, give 6 a go. And that's because that is the one trick that you're going to miss. Okay, let's have a look at another one. So again, we've got our South as our dealer this time, and they've got a pretty nice hand. So what they've got here is 18 points. They can't open with no trumps because they're not balanced. And they've also got an extra point. So what they're going to do is start off with 1 diamond. Now when it gets around to our North player, with 2 5-card suits, their job here would be to bid their highest one first. So they're going to bid 1 spade. Now straight away, if I was the North player holding this hand, I know we're at least going to have enough points for a game contract together. And that's because they've got about 16 points, opposite partners 12, always going to be enough for game. Now when it comes back to our opener, they've got enough points that they could actually make a reversing bid. So if you haven't learned about reverses, it's a really good thing to learn about, and we do have a lesson on it at another place on the website. So here, our South player could bid 2 hearts, which would be a reversing bid, and that means it's going to be promising that they've got 16 or more points in their hand. Now, it's really interesting after a reverse bid, because here our responders actually got far more information. A reverse bid which promises 16 can be added to our responder's hand, or the North hand, to know that we've actually got a minimum of 32 together. So this is where they know that they're 16, opposite partners 16, we've at least got 32 together. And they've got a very nice fit in hearts, don't they? So coming back to what to do in this situation, where you've got that, you know you've at least got 32, but you're not sure if you've got any more. If I had this North hand, using our tips of the more distributional you are, the more eager you should be to bid slam, I'd be very keen to look for slam with this North hand. So I'd know we've got a really nice 9-card fit together, and we've got some distribution as well. So with the North hand, if you do play a convention like Roman keycard, you could bid 4 no trumps here, and just check for the aces, because both hands are probably adding on potentially shortage points. If you don't play something like that, I'd just give 6 a go. And this is because the more distributional you are, the more eager that you should be to bid a slam contract. So you might even just give 6 a go and hope that it works out. As it so happens, on this hand you could actually even make it grand slam. I don't know if you've got quite the tools to get there. Some people who have been playing and have cue bidding and things like that might be able to. But as you can see, just having all this distribution working together makes the hands very, very powerful, because all the long suits are going to take tricks. Okay, we'll have a look at another one. So here we are, and this time we have our North player as the dealer. So this is a bit of an interesting one. What we're going to have here is we're going to have our North player open with something like 1 club. So what they've got is they've got 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 points. Not enough to, or not one too many to open 1 no trump. So what they're going to do is they're going to open a club with the aim of jump bidding in no trumps later. So when it comes to our responder, they can just bid 1 diamond, taking it nice and slowly. And then our opener comes back and says 2 no trumps. Partner, I've got 18 or 19 points, and I've got a balanced hand. Now, in this situation, our responder's got quite an extreme hand shape here. The first thing that you need to know when partner does bid no trumps or shows a balanced hand as the opener is that any time you have a 6-card or longer suit as responder, you can add on shortage points and you can know that you're going to have a fit. And that's because partner being balanced, they must have 2 cards in the suit for you. So if I was south here, I'd be thinking, okay, I've definitely got to fit in diamonds, so that's not going to be a problem at all. And how many tricks can I take? Now this is a very extreme hand where what you can do is you can count all 7 of your diamond tricks. So we're definitely taking 7 diamond tricks, and what you might be able to do as well is visualize what's going to happen with the rest of the hand. Now here, if we have a look at it, what's going to happen is that if they lead the ace of spades, they're going to get to take that trick. On the other hand, if they didn't lead the ace of spades, you'd actually be able to take all the tricks if you were the south player. And that's because your spades would actually get discarded on the queen of hearts and also the queen of clubs. When your partner's promised a balanced hand and you do have a distributional hand with a 7 card suit or even a 6 card suit, it's important to do a thing that we call hand visualization, where what happens is you picture what high card points could partner have. Now, if I had the south hand, imagine being able to picture that your partner has the ace and the king of spades, and they've also got the ace of hearts and the ace of clubs. Now, that's not even giving them enough points for their bid, so that would be just giving them 7 and 8, 15 points, and you could be making a grand slam contract. It's a really weird idea to be able to do, but what you can do is you can picture where their points were. And if that were the case, what could happen is you could be there for a grand slam. So this is one where it's not necessarily the points that are going to be as obvious, but it's also the length and distribution of the hand. And again, the more distributional you are, the more tricks that you are going to take. So that was the last of our demonstration board, and I'll just do a bit of a recap here. Okay, so for our slam contracts, we're talking about contracts at the 6 or the 7 level. What we're looking for is we're looking for 33 to 36 points for a 6 level contract and 37 or more for a 7 level contract. Now, the weird thing that happens, if you're looking at a no trump contract, it's all just about those high card points. And that's because we need our high card points just to be able to take the tricks, and potentially our long suits can help as well. When we're talking about a suit contract, that's when slam bidding gets a little bit more messy, and that's because we're introducing the distributional points. It means that the whole size of the deck has expanded, and this is where things like asking for aces actually come in really handy. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out 2 things when we're looking for slam. Number 1, do we have enough points? So that's if we've got the 33 to 36. And then number 2, are we missing 2 tricks straight away? And that's the 2 aces or 2 key cards if you play Roman key card or Blackwood. For newer players, I think one of the biggest challenges is what to do if you've got somewhere between 31 and 35 points. What do you do with those hands? Do you give it a go or don't you? For the most part, I'd say that newer players are probably more conservative than they should be bidding slam. And what I do is the more distributional you are, the more eager you should be to try to bid a slam contract. So if you're ever asking yourself, should I give it a go or shouldn't I? If you're more distributional, lean on the side that you should give your slam contract a go. The next thing is, are you going to be missing those 2 tricks? So this is where Roman key card and Blackwood do come in handy. Now, when we're talking about the 2 tricks and Roman key card or Blackwood, we're only really talking about suit contracts. When you're talking about no trumps, because it's all about those high card points, you're not going to be missing those 2 aces if you've got enough points. And that's because if you've got 33 or more high card points, you can't possibly be missing 2 aces. So when we use no trump slams, you're actually looking at the quantitative no trump. And that would apply, which was our auctions that go something like 1 no trump, pass 4 no trumps. You shouldn't use this one as Blackwood. It should be a way of saying, partner, are you closer to 17 points or are you closer to 15? And if partner's closer to 15, they simply pass. If they're closer to 17, what they do is they give 6 no trumps a go. Now, the reason that we do this is that because if we have enough points for slam, we just simply bid it. You don't need to ask for aces, and that's because you know with the number of points that you're going to have together, you can't possibly be missing 2 aces. So this would be something like a hand that had, say, 18 high card points. They know together both hands are going to have at least 33. So our general tips for bidding slams: the more distributional you are, the better. Give slam a go. Listen to the opponent's bidding. The more bidding that they do, the less keen that you should be to bid slam. And if you're not going down in slam contracts, you're not bidding enough slams. So what you should be doing is, I guess, testing out the waters a bit, experimenting and becoming comfortable in both bidding slams, playing them, and also going down in them. If you go down in a slam contract, it shouldn't be something that ruins your day. It should be an everyday part of the game. So where to go from here? What you want to do is experiment around a bit, bid more slams than what you currently are. Introduce quantitative bids. So this is something like the 1 no trump, 4 no trump would be the next step. And from there, what you can do is you can move on to more advanced conventions, such as cue bidding and also Roman keycard. Now, throughout the site, we do have quite a few videos that can help you on your way to slam bidding. We've got Slam Bidding Philosophy, which is a featured lesson. We've got a few in our daily doses as well, and we have lessons on Roman keycard and also cue bidding as well. So what you can do is when you feel that you are at that stage where you'd like to look for that next thing to do with your slam bidding, jump in and have a look at those lessons. So thanks all for watching, and we'll see you next time.